Hello, YouTube friends. I want to welcome to the channel Melody Wilding. Melody is a sensitive striver like me, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think that you might be a sensitive striver as well if you watch this channel. Before Melody comes on and answers all of our questions, I have to brag about her. So Melody is a licensed master social worker and an executive coach for smart, sensitive, high achievers, and the author of Trust Yourself, Stop Overthinking, and Channel Your Emotions for Success at Work. She's a professor of human behavior at Hunter College and a contributor to Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, Forbes, and Business Insider. Welcome, Melody.
I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. So I started to read this book, and as you can see, I just slowly started adding tabs, and I was like, that's me, that's me, that's me. And so I'm hoping, first of all, thank you for being on the channel. And I was hoping that you could start us off with, what is a sensitive striver?
A sensitive striver is someone who is both highly sensitive, so they think and feel everything more deeply, but they are also high achieving. So they are driven, career oriented, and put a lot of pressure on themselves to succeed. So that combination of traits can be a complete superpower, but it is not without its downsides.
Okay, so I was so happy when you put this into words. I think that what happens to a lot of folks who are, maybe if you're watching, if you're also sensitive, if you're an overachiever, we tend to use negative words for ourselves. So I think that if you're a sensitive striver, you tend to say, oh, I'm a neurotic, or I'm over worrier, or I'm way too anxious, or I'm anal, or all these ridiculous words that I think have a really negative connotation. And you brought such relief, because as soon as I started reading, I went, oh, A, this is normal. There are other people like me. And B, there's an actual checklist. And so what I want to do, if you would humor me, so on page 15, you have this amazing checklist. So what I want to do for folks listening, I want you to, on your fingers, if it's you, I want you to count how many of these sound like you. I'm going to read the first 10. Okay, I'm not going to read all of them, but if you get enough of these 10, you're going to know it's you. Okay, ready? So think of all these statements that sound like you. I experience emotions at a high level of depth and complexity. I have a strong desire to exceed expectations in every aspect of my life, even the ones that don't matter. I consider myself to be driven and enjoy pushing myself to achieve goals. I'm obsessed with goals. I'm addicted to goals. Goals are a hobby. I crave meaning and fulfillment all the time. I need to think through decisions before I act. I have an inner critic that never takes a day off. I'm like, am I reading these too slow? Am I reading these too fast? Like right now I'm criticizing myself for how I'm reading this checklist. Okay, I'm gonna read one more. I'm kind, compassionate, and empathetic to others. So what I like about this checklist is there's both positive and negative things. Both positive and negative things. How did you come up with this list? Tell me all about your research.
This is really drawn from my professional experiences, having coached people who are sensitive strivers for 10 years, my background in psychology and neuroscience, and my personal experiences is, as you were saying, I am a sensitive striver myself. All my life I have been told I'm too sensitive. I need to stop taking things too personally. And so in working with my clients for 10 years, I just kept seeing very predictable patterns about the way they approach the world, about challenges they faced in their work. And I also drew on a large body of research of what we know now about the trait of high sensitivity, because it is a very real biological trait difference that about 15 to 20% of the population has. So it is not a defect. It is not a flaw. This is actually an evolutionary advantage that leads you to be more attuned and have a more calibrated nervous system, which leads to heightened awareness of both what's going on within you and around you.
So 15 to 20% of the population, we think, has this gene,
Well, what we know, scientists are still in the process of figuring out the exact genetic underpinnings, but what we do know now is that fMRI scans show that people with high sensitivity have different activation in brain areas related to attention, decision-making, self-awareness, other awareness. So I know you, Vanessa, talk a lot about mirror neurons and empathy, and people who are sensitive strivers have more active mirror neurons. So their brain actually lights up more when they see other people having an emotion. And so that is what leads to them being so emotionally intelligent.
Okay, so I love this part of the book so much, because if you're a sensitive striver, if you've even checked out a couple of those on the checklist, I want you to reframe that this is a superpower. This is a skill. you just heard that that means that our brains light up in a different way, which means that I think we're seeing more, we're experiencing more. It's almost like we have like a radar vision into emotions. Am I overselling, or can I say that I have a superpower?
You're exactly right. And in the book, I actually provide, this diagnostic for assessing your qualities as a sensitive striver, one of them being heightened vigilance, which is a tremendous strength. You are the one in the workplace that probably spots patterns or gaps, problems before they cost a lot of time and money. You see opportunities, you are expecting eventualities before they happen, which helps you be creative, helps you offer new opportunities that other people are missing. So it is a tremendous advantage, but you're right that it really comes down to us having the confidence to claim it as such.
Oh, okay. Confidence to claim it as such. I also want to reframe here is I used to think of this skill as worrying. I would like joke that I have, if I could join an Olympic sport, I would try to be a worrier because that's what I'm so good at. But then I realized actually worrying is sort of a negative word. Another way of looking at worrying is exactly what you mentioned, which is problem prevention. Right.
Mhm.
Like I think that sensitive strivers, we are great at making pros and cons lists. We're great at thinking about step B, step C, step three, step B, step C, step D, step E, right? I'd be thinking of the numbers that come after that, right? We're really good
Yeah.
at seeing into the future, and people need us. And so what I like to think of is like, you want to have a sensitive striver on your team, or you want to be the sensitive striver on your team, because non-sensitive strivers, they get us through a crisis. They can be calm and collected. The sensitive strivers, we prevent crises from happening in the first place,
Mhm.
right? You want to
You
have both.
You said it perfectly, that the sensitive striver is someone who is so thoughtful, and really the trait of sensitivity, why it is an evolutionary advantage. I mentioned that before, is because sensitive people pause before acting. They're not the ones who, in a group would go run out into a dangerous situation. They were the one that said, wait a minute, let's assess our surroundings and see if it's safe to go out and get food. And so that same tendency now can be such an advantage.
Okay, I have a funny story to tell you. So, I'm a mom of a toddler, and a word that I notice that I say a lot is careful, 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 because I can see that if she's running down the street and there's a curb and I see a leaf pile and I see a puddle, I can see all the potential things. So I'm careful. So I think that my daughter has inherited this sensitive striver superpower, because we were playing the other day with some neighbor kids, and all the kids were jumping in puddles, like jumping, jumping, jumping. And Sienna, my daughter, was standing off to the side and she's watching, and then she yells, careful, careful.
Oh.
To the other kids. And I was like, I don't know if that's learned or innate, but I think that maybe I'd pass this on. So I'm hoping that also as parents, if you notice the sensitive striver nature in your children, in your partners, in your coworkers, instead of shutting them down and saying, don't worry about it, stop overthinking, just calm down, those shut down that natural tendency that actually can help them be successful. So I think that also it's your job, if you're watching and you're not a sensitive striver, or you can kind of cultivate that as a superpower in the people around you. What a gift.
100%. You said it personally. And I said this is 20% of the population. So it's 1 in 5 people. This is you. This is someone who you know, or you work with, or you manage. And you're exactly right. Just like we understand personality differences like introversion or extroversion in the workplace, this is another dimension of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to talk about something that I laughed out loud. I was reading it in the living room and I yelled to my husband. I was like, she mentioned the honor roll hangover. Can you define what the honor roll hangover is, what it is, and how we know if we have it?
Yes. So the honor roll hangover is that achievement addiction that follows us into our adulthood. So if anyone here is that classic A plus gold star, tick all the boxes sort of kid, then you may have an honor roll hangover as an adult. It is that striving for the perfect grade and feeling like anything less than that is a failure. So a lot of times I hear this with clients, if they don't exceeds expectations across everything on their performance review, they feel like, what am I doing at this job? I'm a complete failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the honor roll hangover is really comprised of 3 parts. The first is perfectionism, being highly self-critical, having high standards for yourself, thinking that nothing you do is ever good enough. Then we have people pleasing. People with the honor roll hangover, you may follow what you think you should be doing or what would make other people happy, for example. You may say yes too often and have trouble saying no. You may change your opinions if somebody else disagrees with them or there's conflict. And then the last is overfunctioning. And this is an extension of both perfectionism and people pleasing, but overfunctioning is really taking on more responsibility than is actually yours. Responsibility in terms of fixing or rescuing other people, enabling them, so to speak, or even taking on responsibility for other people's emotions, trying to control how someone responds to an email, for example, is a great idea of over functioning.
When I read this, I feel like you're preaching gospel because I thought this was all in my head. So I don't know if anyone watching is feeling this. If you do, I would love to hear which part is resonating with you in the comments. But as I read it, I didn't realize that was an experience that other people were having, which immediately, one, made me feel less alone, but two, made me realize, oh, maybe this is something that I can work on. Like maybe this isn't just necessarily how I'm wired, that maybe I can actually optimize it. So what can we do? And those are three very big buckets, right? And I know that you dive deep into this in the book. One that I wanted to specifically call out, which maybe is a branch of overfunctioning, which is opportunity FOMO. So you use this in the book and I was like, oh, that is the problem that I have. So opportunity FOMO is
that feeling of feeling afraid to say no to something because this could be your big break. This could be that big career opportunity or networking connection that you've been looking for. So I have to go. I have to show up. I have to say yes to this and take this on. So that is opportunity FOMO. And it really leads us to overextend ourselves. And one thing I found really helpful to help me combat this is I always ask myself, would I want to be doing this thing if I had to do it tomorrow? So let's say someone invites me to do a speaking engagement at a tropical location where that's really appealing to me. Would I really want to pack up my bags and go if this were tomorrow? So that's a very helpful, reducing, scoping down the frame is very helpful in terms of navigating that opportunity FOMO.
Okay, I love that idea. It also brings your future self, which is more idealistic, into the present, which immediately gut checks you. I also thought to myself, so I opened up my calendar and I could quickly identify which bucket each thing on my calendar went to. So for example, there was a meeting that I had that was complete people pleasing. Like I literally just did it because I didn't want to disappoint this colleague. And there was another one that was absolutely opportunity FOMO, which was absolutely like, I should do this because I feel like it could be my next big break and I don't want to say no to an opportunity. And the other one was the first one, which was another P word, perfectionism.
Perfectionism, yep.
What was your first one? What was the first bucket?
Perfectionism, people pleasing, and overfunctioning.
Yes. So the other one was like, I want to get this right. It was with our content calendar, even though it's good enough. Like I didn't need to go through it and drill it again. And so it helped me realize, at least with a different eye, what should my calendar look like? What does my ideal calendar look like? And so a little challenge for people at home is I would think about these three buckets, look at your calendar, and are you really wanting to do the things that you're doing? Are you looking forward to the things? Do they feel essential? Or are they people pleasing, perfectionism, and opportunity FOMO? Oh, it's a horrible but wonderful exercise. Okay. I wanted to ask you about one of the tips that I loved is you talked about having an internal board of directors.
Yes.
This was really helpful for me, and I was hoping you could share it with our amazing audience.
Of course. So this is in the chapter that is all about accessing and listening to your gut, your intuition. And this is such a center point of trusting yourself. I couldn't write a book called Trust Yourself without talking about listening to yourself. And intuition for us sensitive strivers, our gut sense tends to be more highly developed than the other 80% of people. Because we have that heightened awareness and deeper processing, we're not only paying attention to and taking in more information, but we're making sense of it at a more complex level. So our intuition, which is really just that pool, that store of memories, preferences, desires that we have, that when you have a decision, your brain very quickly, in fractions of a millisecond, goes through that mental Rolodex and picks the best decision based on the context. So your intuition is like a muscle. And for many sensitive strivers has been neglected for so long because of the honor roll hangover and all of the things we've been talking about. So, the board of directors is an exercise for personifying the different voices you may have within you. Since whenever we're approaching a decision, I find that my clients tend to have not just one voice in their head. They may have one that's highly critical. They may have one that is very encouraging, that is more like their inner coach. They may have a very playful, rebellious side that wants to come out, and that side has certain desires.
Mm-hmm.
So, the inner board of directors is a way to help navigate those voices and listen to what they're saying. Because most of the time we are squelching one down, we're telling it to be quiet, or another one is really dominating and running away with the show.
Okay, so I highly recommend, please get the book because you walk through this exercise in such a beautiful way. I also, I think it allowed me to be kinder to myself, right? Once I was able to sort of identify these different voices, it allowed me to be like, oh, that's just my inner dictator. Like that's the dictator trying to control things I can't control. Instead of being like, oh, why do I do that? That's so stupid. Right. So it allowed me to have a name for something and welcome it as a part of my intuition, as opposed to tamping it down, stamping it down, trying to get it to be quiet. And so I highly recommend start with this exercise. Start thinking about what are the different voices in your head and hopefully also tap into that chapter. Okay. The last big topic I wanted to talk about is I wanted you to explain, I love this, the 10-10-10 rule. So what's the 10-10-10 rule and how can we use it?
The 10-10-10 rule is a perspective taking hack. So whenever you find yourself overthinking a certain situation, or on the flip side, feeling like you're afraid to take a risk, ask yourself, will this even matter 10 weeks, 10 months, or 10 years from now?
Okay.
And you would be surprised. Yeah.
Will this matter? This is the 10-10-10 rule. Will this matter 10 weeks, 10 months, or 10 years from now? Beautiful. Okay, keep going. I love it.
Yes. And that immediately cuts through all of the mental BS to help you realize that actually the story I'm spinning in my head, what I'm making this mean, how I'm overthinking it is just a waste of energy, because more times than not, a decision can be reversed or will have changed or will just not be a big deal. You know, that comment that someone made about your presentation or they left on your blog that really got to you. Are you even going to remember what that person said or how you felt in this moment in that time frame? Likely not. So it's a really great way to unhook from that emotional reaction.
Okay, so I love this rule internally, but I have one more additional hack here. Teach this rule to your partners, your colleagues, and your friends who are not sensitive strivers. Because here's what happens in a lot of our interactions and communication is they're well-meaning, right? So they'll say to you, you'll be worrying about something or overthinking something or, mentioning something, and they'll say, oh, don't worry about it. That's no big deal. Or that won't matter in a few days. Or I don't think she meant it that way, right? Whatever they're trying to, I would say minimize, but they would say help. Right. So I feel minimized and dismissed, but they're actually trying to help. They're coming from a good place. So if you have that person in your life who just in a well-meaning way makes you feel like you're being dismissed, I would teach them this rule so they can ask it of you. So they can say to you, hey, like, have you 10-10-10 this? Like, will this matter in 10 weeks? Will this matter in 10 months? Will this matter in 10 years? And it is such a helpful tool for them to help you and not feel dismissed. And then you can talk it out. Like maybe you think it will matter in 10 weeks. Okay, that's something to talk about, right? So it's a really great way to give them a tool to talk about it, for partners. I don't know if you work with a lot of partners of sensitive strivers, but are there any other traps that they should be aware of?
Yeah, talking about what you need in that moment. So, for example, if you need space in that moment just to process, if you need this person just to listen to what you're saying and not to problem solve with you, then that's really crucial. If you need space at the end of your day to just decompress and let your nervous system reset before you launch into talking about your days, that's something your partner needs to know. So being able to understand your own needs, what's actually going to help you function best as a sensitive striver, and then communicating that, setting those boundaries with other people is really crucial.
Okay, so there was so many action steps in this video. If you benefit from this video, which I hope you did, there is so much more. I pulled out just 4 of these tips. There are so many more gems in here. And I also want to make sure that if you are a sensitive striver, you don't feel alone. This is actually not only other people experiencing this, 15 to 20% of the population, but actually that these folks have the superpower. It's like discovering you have this secret superpower. We just have to leverage it for good. Melody, I want to thank you so much for writing this book. I feel like it was brave to write this book. Did it feel brave?
Thank you. It was 5 years in the making, so it felt it felt very difficult at times, but also I couldn't not write it, if that makes sense. It had to come out of me, and I'm just so happy with how it's turned out and the reaction that we're getting and the reception that it's receiving.
Well, it is a beautiful book. I am so grateful for it. I'm grateful for you being on the channel. I'm grateful for everyone watching. If you clicked on this video, it means there's some truth in here that you have to wrestle with, grapple with, and hopefully strengthen. I want to thank everyone for watching. In the comments below, let me know what resonated most with you, what step you're going to take next. Give the video a like, share it with another sensitive driver in your life. And Melody, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, everyone.
Are you living up to your full potential? Do you want more? I would love to help you. Get started with my free training and learn more about People School today. Visit scienceofpeople.com/pschool.